Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. And if that mockingbird won't sing, Mama's gonna buy you a diamond ring.
That's fucking creepy shit. Halloween is this weekend, so it's kind of the time when everybody wants to be creeped out. I kind of wanted to do a video where I talked about some of my personal, like, paranormal experiences, but I knew I would get anxiety doing it because when I talk about it, I'm like reliving those moments. I didn't want to do it with my boyfriend home because I don't really want to say so much that he's like a skeptic. Long story short, he does not like me talking about the things that I've experienced. It really, really weirds him out. So I kind of wanted to do it like whenever he wasn't home, but at the same time I knew that talking about it in this place like by myself would really, really, really creep me out. So I was like, well, maybe if I just kind of like talk about it to myself before I start filming. I didn't want to do that either, and here's the reason why. I think in order for you to really, really understand some of the things that I say, you need to be in the moment with me as I'm talking about them. I need to be able to show my emotions and everything as I'm talking about it, and that way I can, I guess, send the vibes to you, and maybe you will be able to understand a little bit better just by watching me talk about it. With that being said, I know that a lot of people are skeptics, and I respect that. That is okay. I respect it 100%. I know a lot of people and have met a lot of people in my life where their life has been totally normal and they've never had anything creepy happen to them at all, and they're just floating on through life, you know, like living this scare-free life. I wonder what that's like living a life where you didn't grow up like literally scared to death all the time. But those people, I understand why they don't believe in these kinds of things, because all they have is these crazy stories people tell them, and they're like, well, that stuff's real. Why haven't I had anything happen to me? You know? So I respect it, and it completely makes sense. And I wouldn't wish these experiences on anybody that doesn't want them in their life, because these things, they're really, really big deals. They really change the way and shape the way that you think and the way that you feel about life. With all of that being said, I understand that there's people that don't really believe in this kind of stuff, and like I said, I respect that 100%. But I have heard all of the skepticism and all of the, well, it could have been this, it could have been that. I've thought these things myself with my own experiences. If you're one of those people where before you even watch this video, you already know you're going to be calling like bullshit on everything that I say, just don't watch it, because there's really no point, because you already know you're going to have negative things to say. I'm going to start with one of the first things I remember ever happening to me. I was not allowed to watch horror movies or scary shows or anything when I was a kid. My parents were very keep that away from me and my sister. Home that me and my sister grew up in was horrifying. I don't ever remember a time where I didn't have terrifying things happen to me in that house. Everybody in that house had their own set of personal paranormal experiences, but just to give you a lowdown of how scary that house was, my brother was taking a shower one day. The door to the bathroom was shut and it was locked, but the light went out. And when it went out, all of a sudden, he said it was like somebody had taken their hand, boom, 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 all down the side of the shower curtain. Or one of my mom's friends had come down and she stayed in her house. She heard something running up and down the hallway all night. She went into my parents' room with my dad in the bed and woke my mom up scared to death. She didn't ever want to stay there again. My sister was on the computer one day, and right behind her head, something clapped really loudly behind her head, and directly before that, she had felt like as if somebody was breathing on the back of her neck. And then I think the most prominent thing was the feelings that you would get. You could be in there, just sitting there, minding your own business, and then all of a sudden it's like 20 people walked into the room and started staring at you. So that's a quick little reference of my childhood. That is things that happened like for a long time, my whole life. But the first thing that I remember seeing, I cannot tell you how old I was because I do not know. I don't even think I was in school yet. I was really, really young. So keep in mind that the things that I'm saying about this is going to be my 25-year-old self speaking for my young child self. I loved being outside, and I would always go out into our backyard and I would play with my dog, or I would swing on my swing, And anytime one of the neighbors would come out, it was never a big deal because I knew who our neighbors were. We had those kind of fences that were like shaped like this. Like, I don't know if you don't, they're like wired and they're like shaped like this. They're like really, really crappy fences. Like, they don't keep anybody from not seeing in the fence at all. You like see like straight through them. The two neighbors on each side had those fences. But on this side, our neighbor had the wire fence, but on the other side of them, the neighbors had a wooden fence. So there was a space, like, there was a space about like that where you could like walk through it. And you could walk from like the street view side to the back, like behind our streets, and we had like a tree house back there and stuff. So it wasn't unusual that the kids on the neighborhood would go on that little walkway and go to the tree house. That wasn't weird at all. That was something very normal. So it didn't make sense why this moment really scared the shit out of me. I was in the backyard, and all of a sudden I got that feeling, I'm sorry, I'm getting chills. All of a sudden I got that feeling like I was being stared at. Seriously scares me to talk about it, like crap. I looked in the direction that I felt like I was being stared at from, and there were two boys. They had very, 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 very pale, lifeless faces. They were both wearing leather jackets, and they both had shoulder-length hair. The one that looked older, he had his arms up on the fence like this, and he was going like this, and he was staring at me. The other one was kneeling down on one knee, and he had his other knee up, and his elbow was rested on it, and he was peering through the little holes at me. When I turned and I looked at these boys, I made eye contact with the one that was like this. And it was like somebody took a magnifying glass or something and put it in front of my face. And it was like I was looking at his face like this close to it. I have never in my life seen anybody with eyes that black and that soulless in my life. I have never in my life seen anybody where when they're standing there, it's almost like they're an image. These boys looked human, but the life was not in their faces. And the weirdest thing is that the wind was not blowing their hair around. Everything about them was like frozen there. That is the only thing I remember about that moment. As I got older, I realized that I had never saw these boys before that. I had never seen them since then. I described them to my family, and my family had never, ever, ever, ever seen anybody that looked like that on this street. I don't really know what to say of that experience other than there's something, my memory of it and me seeing it, there's something about it that did not feel right. Out of all the times in my childhood where I looked or I saw somebody or I was being looked at by somebody, I never, ever, ever had an experience like that. There's just something about that place. And when you go to it still to this day, because I have, when you go to it, there's still this heaviness. Second thing that happened to me, I remember like it was yesterday. I'm not going to get into too many details about that night because a lot of it is very, very personal for my family. There were some things that were going on that night that I feel like isn't my business to share. So I will just skip the reasons why, and you can just fill in the blanks. Me and my sister and my mom and my dad were up really, really late this night. I was in bed with my sister in her room, and we were like cuddled up next to each other in the bed. Well, I was staring towards like the doorway, just kind of like zoning out while they were talking to me, not really paying attention to anything that they were saying like kids do. The door was open, and then there was a space about this far from the door and the wall. Our light was on in there, so it was completely bright. It wasn't dark at all. I was zoning out towards the doorway when something caught my eye from behind the door and the wall. I don't know how to describe this because it sounds crazy. Smoke in a completely rounded shape popped up from behind the door, and I'm seeing this smoky thing, and I'm seeing the smoke kind of move. I swear to God, if you took me as a silhouette and you turned me into smoke and you had from about right here up, that's what I saw. It was shoulders, and it had a neck, and it had a head, and it just popped out from behind the door, and I was staring at it, and as soon as I started really, really freaking out and crying, as soon as my parents went to turn to look to see what I was looking at, I watched that thing pull back behind the door. I remember that, and I still get so petrified because there was something about that moment that was meant for me. I didn't realize it in the moment when I was there. Gosh, these chills, like it's made me feel like I got bugs crawling on me. But I didn't realize it at the moment how personal that felt. I was staring over here and this thing pops up behind the door, and then as soon as anybody else goes to look, I watch it pull away. It was there for me. It wanted me to see it. As I got older, my mom ended up telling me that same day, hours and hours and hours before that, she was in there on the computer. This is the same computer that my sister was at when something clapped behind her head. And she saw what she thought she saw was like just smoke just go in front of the computer screen in her face. And she was like, what the heck? That was the same day that thing popped up behind the door. So in that moment I didn't realize it, but my mom knew exactly what I saw because she had seen it earlier that day. I'm going to get to the most prominent memory that I have of something really, really scary that happened to me. And this is something that didn't just happen to me. On the street that we lived on, I had a little boyfriend. We would play together and everything for like 2.5 years. Like I was really, really close with him. He was like one of my best friends on the street. I was about 10 or 11 years old. It wasn't that long before I moved away. Me and him, we were sitting on our front porch, and he had his back on the front door and kind of like the little corner area. And there was a pole that would hold up like the porch area right there that had like our address on it. And I was leaning against that facing him. So behind me was our front yard and then our neighbor's yards across the street. So I was facing him, and I really can't tell you what we were talking about. I just remember it was about 9:30 at night. My sister was at our neighbor's house playing video games. My mom was inside on the computer, and me and him were just sitting out there talking in our front yard. Well, we were sitting there, and I was looking at him in the face the whole time, and we were just talking like nothing. And I'm seeing him just kind of look, you know, just kind of looking through the yard as he's talking. I was looking at his face, and I saw when he saw whatever it was that he was seeing. I saw that first moment when he looked at it. I can't even mimic his face. I can't even mimic it. I wish I could show you guys how much goosebumps I have. Like, I literally wish I could, because like this creeps me the fuck out. Like, this creeps me out so bad. I wish I could show you. Kind of leans forward a little bit and he points like this. I immediately saw exactly what he saw. You guys are gonna think I'm crazy. I swear to God. I swear to literal God right now. I turned and I looked where he was pointing. This sounds so crazy. I have never heard anybody describe seeing anything like this. I watch lots of ghost shows. I do. I watch lots of ghost shows, and I have never in my life heard anybody talk about seeing anything like this, ever. I don't have anything to relate it to. I've never seen an image that looked this way. I've never heard a story of anybody where they were talking about where they saw something like this. This is the most crazy thing. It's crazy. It's crazy. But I turned and I looked, and there is this silhouette of a person, a adult-sized person. They were tall, so it was about this far off the ground. And it had arms and it had legs. This thing had a smoky appearance, and it was moving almost like it was dancing. You could see its arms going like this, and you could see its legs. It had a torso, it had shoulders, it had a neck, it had what looked like would be a head. And sometimes when it was moving like this, it would kind of, I guess, mold into each other, and it would look like a smoky blob. It was in my neighbor's yard directly across the street. It was in between her house and in the house directly in front of the house next to us. It was in between that area right there, kind of close to like the other neighbor's driveway. And The weirdest thing about this is that it wasn't smoky colored. So it was like the color of those smoke bombs that you get on the 4th of July, the green ones, and it wasn't like a neon green, it was almost like a pastel neon green. And it was smoky. So we look at this thing, and this is all I'm receiving in my brain in the about 2 to 3 seconds that I stared at it. Yeah, I didn't look at it for very long before I freaked the fuck out. Like, I freaked out so bad. Like, ooh, I freaked out like so bad. But anyways, when I turned and I looked at it, like what my brain received is there is a smoky thing dancing around in the yard over there, and it's green. That's not normal. What the hell is that? Oh my god. I didn't even look back at him. I just jumped up, and I hear him jumping up, and me and him are like trying to get inside like my house, and we were both shaking so bad and trying to open the door so quickly that we couldn't get the door open. Like, we were like turning it, but like our hands were like we were like shaking so bad. Like, we were literally running for our lives or something. So we come flying into the house, and me and him are like screaming over the top of each other trying to tell my mom, because when you walk in the door, you have the living room, and then directly across is the dining room where my mom was sitting on the computer. So we could see her as soon as we got inside. So we go running into my mom, and we're like yelling over the top of each other, there's something in the neighbor's yard over there, and it's moving, it's green, and it's the ghost or something over there, you need to go look. And we're like freaking out, like, right, we're like yelling. My mom's going like, calm down, like, what's going on, like, what did you guys see, like, what is this? My mom tells us, you know, stay in here, and we're like, no problem. My mom goes outside, and she leaves the front door open, and we had like a screen door. So me and him are literally looking through the screen door at my mom. The weirdest part is we can still see it. It's still there. Like, I swear to God, it's still there, and it's still doing its like thing. My mom is walking really slowly across our front yard. We see her stop in the middle of the yard, and then she just goes down like that, and she just kind of gets in like this hunched position, and her neck kind of stretches out, and we see her standing like that for a good 5 to 10 seconds, and we can see that whatever the hell that thing was, it's still there. We can see it, and we see my mom, and then my mom turns around and comes inside. When my mom came inside, she said, shut the doors, do not look out of the windows at all. My sister, she was at her neighbor's house playing video games. My mom picked up the phone, and she called over there, and she told my sister to come back home, but not to look across the street. So right then we're like really freaking out, because there's clearly something there right now if my mom is like telling my sister to like come home and like not to look across the road. That's some creepy shit. So anyways, my sister comes home, and she, when I talk about this situation now, because I'm 25 now, so that was years ago. That was more than 10 years ago that happened. When I talk about that situation now, my mom says that she walked halfway across the yard, and she could see it. She could see it plain as day. Right there, exactly what we saw. She says verbatim exactly what we saw. When you talk to my sister says she remembers getting a phone call from my mom, and when she told her not to look across the street and to come home, she said she did exactly that, because she knew that if my mom was saying don't look over there, it meant don't look over there. My sister is still to this day a scaredy cat. If there's anything scary, she's going to be like, and she's going to stay as far as she can away from it. So her version of the story is she gets a phone call telling her not to look across the street, so she comes home and she doesn't look. I had lost touch with that friend of mine. I don't really want to say his name just in case, but I had lost touch with him for years. We moved away at the time we lived in Arkansas, and then we moved to Oklahoma. So I lived a completely different place, so I didn't talk to him or hang out with him or see him or anything like that. But I always remembered that moment, and I know that I always had my mom to talk about it with, because my mom saw it as well, and we could always talk about how crazy it was and how different it was and how it was like we still don't know what it was to this day. I was always curious if he still remembered, and I had never talked to him. Like, so literally about 2 or 3 months ago, I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? Everybody has Facebook. I'm going to find him on Facebook, and I'm going to write him a message, and I'm going to ask him if he remembers that. So I did exactly that, I wrote him a message and I'm like, this is gonna sound crazy, but like, I used to live on the street with you. I don't know if you remember me, but like, basically what I said is, do you remember that crazy ass green thing that we saw like moving in the yard? Like, do you remember that? He responded and he told me that he still to this day thinks about that and gets so weirded out by that, and that he remembers it. He said he'll never forget that ever, and he has still to this day no idea what it was. That poor guy, I'm pretty sure he still lives on that street. I pray for you, bro. Those are 3 of my most prominent stories that I have from that street where I actually saw things. That's not all of the things that I heard and that I experienced. There's something dark there, and I don't know what happened there. I have no idea, but there's something really, really dark on that land and right there. I have not lived there in 14 years, okay? That's 14 years of my life that I have lived in other places. I still, to this day, have dreams about that place. If you want to hear more from me on some experiences that I've had, I have more to tell you, and I would love to tell them to you. This whole thing and talking about these things has literally given me anxiety so bad, so I kind of want to cut it off right now and move on to happy, chipper things. If you guys want to hear me talk about an experience that I had at the Crescent Hotel and share with you some audio, if you would like to see that, just give me a comment and let me know, and I would love to share that with you. But yeah, give me a thumbs up, let me know if you liked it, and I will see you guys on my next video. Bye! That's spooky over me. It's all over me.